Hi friends, welcome back to Faith and Arrow Homestead. My name is Jaylee. The last time we were in the kitchen together, we made a recipe using cabbage, and today we're going to use the other half of that cabbage. We made a creamy cabbage soup, so good, and this time we are going to use it to make, I think I'm going to call it cabbage unstuffed peppers, like if we were to say cabbage stuffed peppers, because instead of, you could absolutely make them stuffed peppers if you had whole peppers. I don't. So instead I'm going to be using this bag of vacuum sealed peppers that I had down in my deep freezer, and so it's technically like unstuffed peppers. I think it's going to be really good. I've had a lot of fun spending time in the kitchen and trying to come up with recipes. It's hard because everything's been done before, so it's hard to come up with anything original, but I've had fun just kind of throwing different ingredients together, adding different flavors, and trying to come up with something that tastes good. These are going to be kind of Mexican style-ish. I'm kind of leaning that way in this recipe, and you'll see that as we go along here. Also, I don't know if it really matches, but I'm really craving cornbread, so I'm going to make some cornbread to go with this today, but we'll work on that in a little bit. So here I have my cast iron enamel Dutch oven, and I have it coming up to medium heat. I have a generous pat of butter that I'm going to go ahead and throw in and get melting here. I have about half an onion. I chopped this up the other day when we made our creamy cabbage soup. This is just the other half of that onion. There's also little bits of cabbage in here because I just kind of threw them all in the bowl together, but the onions were on the bottom. So that's okay. I don't think it's going to cause too much harm. With that creamy cabbage soup that we had, I was serving it with slices of buttered sourdough bread. I still have been kind of learning. I haven't really talked a whole lot about my sourdough journey. I'm still kind of figuring it out myself, to be honest with you, but I do think I have nailed down a pretty good sourdough sandwich bread, and so that's what we've been eating, and that's what I was serving with the creamy soup. But for this being kind of more of a skillet recipe, I guess, I'm really craving cornbread. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get my onions in here. I'm gonna give these a second to kind of start heating up and sauteing. I also wanna add my peppers, but these just came out of the deep freeze. I had them sitting in a bowl of warm water to try and defrost a little bit, but it's definitely gonna bring down the overall temperature of my pot here when I put them in. So I'm just gonna give this a second to kind of solo heat up and saute a little bit before I put these in. These peppers came out of last year's garden, so I grew these, diced them, and then vacuum sealed them and put them down in my deep freeze and have been slowly working through them. So I'm really excited to have something in this recipe that I grew. I'm gonna go ahead and add these in now. I'm gonna try not to get too much. There's a lot of liquid down here. I'm gonna try not to get too much of that in there. If you wanted to make this a little spicy, you could, if you had a jalapeno pepper or some kind of spicy pepper, you could also chop up one of those and add it in here as well to add a little bit of heat. So I'm gonna go ahead and get these vegetables seasoned a little bit. I've got my Redmond's real salt here, and I'm gonna do a very generous pinch of that. I've also got my favorite black butcher's pepper here. I love cooking with this stuff. I love the grind size, I guess you would say. And then here in this little jar, I have a homemade taco seasoning. I'm not gonna go real heavy on this, but I want to get a little bit of that flavor in there. Let me know down in the comments if you're interested in hearing what I use in my homemade taco seasoning. I have absolutely loved making my own and not having to purchase it from the store. Also, there is no anti-caking agent in here at all. It's just the spices, and it is still perfectly light and fluffy and not caked together at all. And I made this a long time ago, so unnecessary. That smells so good. I'm gonna give this just another minute, and then we're gonna go ahead and get our ground beef added in here and get that browned up as well. I'm gonna go ahead and get my oven preheated to 400 degrees because this is not gonna take me very long to make it all. And I do want to kind of get the cornbread going so that we can eat and we're not waiting on it too long. So I'm gonna get the oven preheated. We're gonna get the ground beef in here, and then we'll have a minute to talk about the cornbread. This is an organic grass-fed ground beef that I get from my local grocery store. I don't know as much about it as I would like to, but it's one of the only options I have locally to me that I've been able to find without getting it from an actual farmer, which I have not yet done. So although I realize this is not necessarily the best, it's still better than nothing. And when you're on the journey to sourcing better ingredients, you just kind of have to do the best that you can. All right, my friends, now I've made cornbread in previous videos. However, I wanted to try a new recipe, so I went to Sally's Baking Addiction because you guys know I love her. I love her website. I love her recipes. And so I wanted to try her cornbread and see how I felt about it. So I have it on my phone here because I've never made hers before. So we're going to give it a try. So I have 2 bowls here, a large and a medium. I just wanted to point out to you that these are my absolute favorite bowls. They're Pyrex, and this is my favorite Pyrex print design to date. I absolutely love it. I have a big bowl and a medium bowl in this design, and this is it. So anytime I see this, I'm going to purchase it because I just love it. So in the large bowl, we are going to put 1 cup of all-purpose flour, which I am running very low on. I ordered a huge bag of it from Azure. I don't remember when, maybe back in, I want to say December, and I underestimated how quickly I would go through it, big time. So it's, you know, I'm still learning how to keep a stocked pantry, but I'm continuing to take notes because I go through things a lot quicker than I think. I have old-fashioned stone ground yellow cornmeal. Use whatever cornmeal you like or have on hand. We're going to add a cup of this as well. She's doing a 50-50. I've made a lot of different cornbread recipes in my day, and some are more heavy on the flour, some are more heavy on the cornmeal. It just kind of depends on what texture and consistency you like. Hers is a 50-50. I think that'll be good. I don't have necessarily a set preference on that. I like cornbread and I like it in a lot of different textures and consistencies, so I think this will be fine. I gave the contents on the stove a quick stir. They're doing great. Next, we are going to add baking soda and baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and half a teaspoon baking soda. Last, it says 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Keep in mind that if you are using salted butter, you want to omit the salt. I'm using unsalted butter, so I'm going to include the salt. We're just going to give all this a little mix here. Next, in our medium bowl, you need 1/2 cup of melted butter. A little tip so that you use as few dishes as possible. If you are adding melted butter into its own bowl with its own ingredients, then just put the butter in first, put the bowl you're putting it in into the microwave, melt it in there, instead of putting it in a separate bowl, melting it and adding it in. I had done that in the past, often if butter was not the first ingredient in the list. Like, for example, we're adding butter, brown sugar, and honey. If it had said brown sugar, honey, butter, then I would add the brown sugar first, and then I'd add the honey, and then I'd try to melt the butter in a separate container and put it in. And then I was like, wow, that's problem solved here, Jaylee. And so I am going to add roughly 1/2 cup because mine's not in measurements, so I just kind of guess in here and melt it. To our melted butter, we're going to add 1/3 cup packed brown sugar. You can do light or dark, doesn't matter. And about 2 tablespoons of honey. You want to go ahead and get that all combined and melted together. The melted butter will help dissolve the honey and the brown sugar. Okay, real quick here. We need to try and make buttermilk. I don't have any buttermilk on hand, but I do have my regular raw cow's milk, so we are going to add 1 cup of that to a separate bowl. And then I'm also going to add roughly 1 tablespoon of distilled white vinegar. We're going to set that aside for a moment. To our butter, honey, and brown sugar, we're going to add an egg. We'll get that mixed in here. Let's let that milk and vinegar sit for a moment and come back over to the stove. I'm going to add some garlic salt in here. Next, I'm going to add some tomato sauce. I ended up buying something called passata. It was on sale, and it says strained tomatoes, but it looks like a tomato sauce. Then I'm going to add 1.5 cups of chicken broth, but you can also just use water if you don't have broth. I'm just using broth because it's flavorful and more nutritious than water. And if you have it, use it. But if you don't, it's not a big deal. You can just use water. Next, I'm going to add a cup of rice. I'm using long grain white rice because honestly, I need to use it up. I would much rather use a fancier rice, but I have this and I need to use it. So this is what we're using. But use whatever you want. Use brown rice, use jasmine rice, use quinoa, use whatever you want. All right, I'm gonna turn the heat up here, bring this to kind of a boil, I guess, just very, very briefly. Won't take long because it's already really hot. Oh, you know what? I almost forgot. Along with the rice, you also want to add in your cabbage. That might help, huh? Forgot all about that. Get that mixed in too. Yeah, there it goes. Now it's bubbling. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat down to low. I'm gonna throw the lid on this. I'm gonna set a timer for 10 minutes and I'm just gonna let this hang out. All right, next I have my cast iron skillet here. This is the same cast iron skillet that I use to make eggs every morning, but it's really well seasoned and right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw this into my preheated 400-degree oven. And we're gonna get back over here to the cornbread. Okay, our buttermilk has had some time to sit here and it is, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it definitely is a little thick. It has thickened up a bit. That's really nice. So we're gonna go ahead and throw that in with our butter, honey, brown sugar. And let's get that mixed together here. It probably isn't going to combine perfectly, but just gonna kind of do the best I can. One of the downsides to having this really, really tiny kitchen is that it gets crowded and cluttered really fast and it really frustrates me. So I'm actually gonna quickly throw some of these things in here because I don't need them. There, that helped a lot. Someday I'll have stretches and stretches of beautiful clear countertop just ready for me to make messy with my various kitchen projects, and I can't wait for that day. But in the meantime, I make do with this little tiny kitchen. Oh, that actually combined really well and is really, really pretty. So we're going to add that to our dry ingredients. A whisk would really be the tool to use here, but I think my whisk is dirty and I only have one whisk. I should really get another one. But I'm just going to use a wooden spoon, and it's fine. At the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. Now, the key with cornbread is that you don't want to overmix it. So you really just want to get everything combined and then stop. All right, now for my favorite little cornbread hack. I've shown you this before. I will always do this as long as I have what I need to do it. I have my cast iron skillet in the oven. It's empty. It's preheating. I'm going to go ahead and grab it. Make sure you have an oven mitt. Now, I have a really, really well-seasoned cast iron skillet because I use it every single day. Look at the shine on that. And so beware that if you don't have a well-seasoned cast iron skillet, you probably shouldn't be using it to make cornbread because it's gonna stick. Here, I have a jar of bacon grease, and I keep it in the fridge for expressly this purpose. So I am going to use my spoon to get some of that out, a hefty amount, and I'm going to melt that in my hot cast iron skillet all along the edges, in the bottom. Get it nice and melted. Really make sure that you get it in along the edges, especially if your cast iron skillet is not really well seasoned. Really, really get it in there. And there really is no right or wrong amount here. This is probably a little more than I needed, but I'm not putting it back in here, so we're gonna go for it. And now we're going to go ahead and pour our cornbread mixture into our hot cast iron skillet. Look at how beautiful and fluffy this is. So good. That bacon grease going to keep your cornbread from sticking to your cast iron skillet, but it's also going to give you a really flavorful, crispy outer edge to your cornbread. And it's just, it's not necessary, but why not? It's so dang good. We're gonna put that into our 400-degree preheated oven and check it I'll set my timer for 18 minutes and I'll check it and see how it's looking. We want it to be golden brown along the edges, and you can use the toothpick trick in the center to see if it's done. The timer for what we had on the stove had 1 minute left, but I needed it for my cornbread, so I went ahead and turned it off. I stirred what we had in there, and I'm going to let that keep going and simmering for a few more minutes because I want to get out my box grater and grate up some cheese. I have this block of cheddar that has been hanging out in my freezer. You can absolutely grate frozen cheese. I know it because I have been doing it, but it is a lot less fun than grating regular from the fridge cheese. All right, you guys, let's finish this up. This has been simmering along and smells lovely. The purpose of that was to cook our rice and soften our cabbage. And I think the amount of time that we gave it, it definitely at least should have. Fingers crossed. The very last thing we're going to do is add in some cheese. You can use whatever type of cheese you want in whatever quantity you want. I have about 2 cups of that cheddar here, and I'm gonna go ahead and get that in here. I think it's funny because in the last recipe we did together, cabbage was kind of the star of the show, and in this case, I don't really feel like it is. Cabbage is just a component. Everything is blended and melded together really well in this recipe, and it smells amazing, and I think it's gonna taste amazing. We'll find out. A little bit of cabbage, pepper, rice, ground beef. Oh, this is gonna be really hot. All right, here we go. Oh my gosh. That is amazing. I'm gonna pour mine right over top of my piece of cornbread and eat it with a fork, and it's gonna be so good. Oh, this is very good, you guys. The rice is cooked well. The cabbage is nice and soft, and I think this is done. I'm gonna turn the heat off. Our cornbread has 7 more minutes, and Tom just hopped in the shower, so by the time he's out of the shower, the cornbread should be cooled enough that I can cut into it, and we'll be in shape. We'll be in good shape. Okay, I'm gonna do a little test here to see how stuck this cornbread is in my cast iron skillet. I'd really like my skillet back, because again, I cook my eggs in it every day. So let's see. Ooh, beautiful, look at that. It broke only because it hit the side of my oven mitt, but look at that. That is amazing. It literally came out of there so beautifully. So there you go, you guys. If you've ever wondered if cast iron is worth it because it sticks and is a pain to clean, and I'm not gonna do anything to this. I'm not gonna wash this. I'm going to put a little butter in it and cook my eggs in it in the morning. Let's taste this. The outside of that is nice and crispy. I love that. Doing that while it was still really hot was probably not the best idea, but it's cool because this section here that broke is exactly what I want for my dinner tonight. So I'll go ahead and get that on a plate here. I've got my plate of kind of broken up cornbread pieces here, and I'm just going to spoon this right on top. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Are you kidding me? Here, babe. Do you want it like this? So this is, I have like the bottom layer is cornbread, and then I just scooped it on top, and I'm gonna eat it with a fork. Do you think that that would be okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Here you go. You can have this one if you want. What do you want to drink?
I have some.
Oh, you do? I gave that one to Tom, so let's do that again. Ugh, come on. That looks so good. All right, you guys, let's try this all together and see how it tastes, because I only made the cornbread because I was really craving cornbread, but the fact that it ended up being right on top like that is really interesting, and I think it's gonna be really good. So let's try it. Mmm. You know what I like? I like that I didn't go heavy on the like taco seasoning. There's just enough to give it a little extra flavor, but not so much that this screams like Mexican or whatever. Because to me, I'm almost getting more of a chili vibe. It's not chili. It doesn't taste like chili, but like I'm getting that vibe, you know, more than it being like a Mexican dish. I guess maybe because of the cornbread. I don't know. The cabbage still has a little bit of a crunch. This is a win, you guys. And I just totally made this up. Just kind of winging it and coming up with it as we go. And it's delicious. So I've been really enjoying that. And that's actually a really great piece of advice for me to give you, because what I did was I went to the farmer's market. Mind you, it is, well, now it's May, but it was April when I went. And I just kind of looked around and just saw what they had and purchased a little of this, a little of that. And then when I got home, I was just kind of brainstorming what I could do with it and how I could throw it together. Granted, I did not put the carrots in this. I originally was going to, and then decided I wanted to go a different direction, and I did peppers instead of carrots. But still, I had the peppers on hand, so that's okay. It's fun to just kind of shop seasonally and then just kind of get creative and just see what you can come up with. I've had a lot of fun doing that, and we've had really delicious, healthy, nutritious meals because of it. So, and I'm supporting local. I supported farmers at the farmers market. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm gonna pour myself a big glass of milk, because anytime I eat cornbread, I have to have a big glass of milk. I'm gonna go sit down with Tom and enjoy my dinner. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions about this recipe, please ask me down below in the comments. I can't wait to see you in my next video. Have faith, my friends, and keep moving forward. Bye.